Pehlوی i Sveriges riksdag på inbjudan av Sverigedemokraterna och Kristdemokraterna. Och jag intervjuade honom i fredags innan fredsförhandlingarna inleddes. Och han menar att det är helt fel av USA att försöka nå en förhandlingslösning med den iranska regimen.
I doubt that there will be a breakthrough in terms of diplomatic negotiations because the conditions that either side are pushing for is very unlikely to be met. I hardly believe that they would be able to find a legitimate compromise. But let's say, hypothetically, that there is some kind of a ceasefire deal. It will only be temporary. I think the regime, once again, is using the tactic of buying time, having a chance to ultimately regroup, and we shall soon see that they will continue and resume their policy of strengthening their proxies in the region and beyond. Because they need to do that to survive. You have to understand that. This regime is not going to abandon what it's done for 47 years, and the only reason he has been kept in power is because the world, instead of putting pressure on them, has tried to appease them, thinking that they will change their behavior. And the Iranian people haven't died at the rate of 50,000 people just for a nuclear deal. We want our liberation. We will get our liberation. We hope we won't be alone in this fight, and the world will support us this time.
What do you think the United States and Israel should do instead?
Finish the job.
And how?
Push the regime all the way to its collapse. Help Iranian people be liberated from it by giving us the air cover that we need so people can go back in the street and reclaim their country. This is what's at stake right now. It's a leverage between the regime ability to still crack down on people. It's a regime that has shut off our country from the whole world and cut off the internet. As long as this situation maintains, there's no way you can approach it in a sense of normalization. The world needs to understand that this is now an obligation to help the people that have been the first victim of this regime and stay true to the principles of fighting for freedom and democracy and human rights. You cannot have a better example of how direly it's been violated by this regime, and hopefully the world this time is not going to give this regime another chance to survive.
The war has enormous consequences, both in terms of human suffering and damage to the world economy. Is it still worth it?
Look, nobody wants war as a first solution. But again, what is the key responsible element that has brought us to the point of having to have a war going on? It's ultimately the regime itself. Let's not forget that this regime has brought us to a point that made conflict unavoidable. The full responsibility is on the shoulders of this regime. It can pull the plug and it can cease and desist, but it won't. It won't because it had ample opportunity to do that in previous years. Why they haven't done it? It's because, as I said, it's their DNA. It's their nature to continue to be belligerent, to continue to threaten, to continue to destabilize the region. How else are you going to remove them? By sending them postcards? Of course not. They're not going to move voluntarily and rationally. So the only language they understand is force. And in this case, force had to be a military intervention.
We have heard President Trump threatening to destroy the Iranian civilization. What went through your mind when you heard that?
Look, we are a country of over 2,500 years of civilization and culture. We've survived so many different invasions, Arab, Mongol, Turk, and we're still standing as a country. There's nothing that can destroy a civilization so easily. I think those were just words, but, I'm not taking those words seriously.
At the beginning, President Trump was clear that he wanted to see a regime change, but that is no longer being discussed. Are you disappointed?
Look, President Trump has been saying many different things and done many different things at the same time. I'm not going to hold every word that he says as a final statement. In fact, right before the air campaign started, there were no talks about a conflict starting, and yet it did. Now they're talking about negotiation. Does that mean that this is the only thing left? We don't know yet. We have to see how it pans out.
You're visiting Sweden next week. Sweden is one of the European countries that has chosen not to actively support the U.S. war. What is your view on that?
Look, I don't think we should expect the whole world to be the same level of commitment if you mean specifically to this exercise. But I think Sweden, as a Western democracy, understands the parameters of what it is important for Europe to do in regards to the situation in the region. Look, right now we have a conflict in Europe between Russia and the Ukraine. You know very well that the Ukraine has the very same similar concerns that we do as Iranians. They're facing a foreign occupier, we're facing a domestic occupier. And we have a common enemy in the sense that it's Iranian regime that is supporting the conflict between Russia and Ukraine by providing them drones. Sweden itself is directly threatened by the Islamic regime. Your own security forces have detected elements that are in place in Sweden to threaten Iranian diaspora members. They've been active on the ground. They're a threat to Sweden directly. This is why you should not feel that you are not part of this conflict, because this regime in other forms is threatening Europe.
So how do you see your own role after a possible regime change?
My plan is to bring about a democratic transition on the basis of having an interim government that manages the country's affairs while we prepare for a constitutional assembly, to be the element that will discuss Iran's future, what the Iranian people want to have as a final form of regime, and of course it has to be in the context of a secular democracy, and let that process pan out.
What do you say to those Iranians who once helped overthrow your father and who do not see you as a legitimate leader today?
Well, a lot of the people who were against my father years ago today are supporting me. Many of them are the very same left that were the most antagonistic to him, and now they are part of this coalition, and we are working together to that end. I'm not running for office, but I want to be a transitional leader that makes it possible for Iranians to decide whatever it is that they want to have for themselves in a fair and transparent democratic election.
But isn't your family history a problem for you as a transition leader?
I am proud of my heritage and my family's history and everything they've done. Look, millions of Iranians came to the streets, chanting the name of my grandfather, chanting the name of my father, chanting my name, chanting the return of Pehlوی, Javid Shah, which means long live the king. Iranians today, I think a lot of the people, the Gen Z of Iran today, are tattooing on their wrists or on their arms my father's autograph or the line of the sun symbol. Now, I'm not arguing for or against monarchy or republic. Understand that. My position is neutral, but I'm telling you that if it goes back to what Iranians today chant, they've been chanting my name, they've been chanting my family name. That should tell you pretty much that the mindset within Iran, unlike some interpretation that some people have in the outside world, is not what you were suggesting. And I think many people remember the era and make the comparison between where Iran was headed, where it is now. Look at what women had back then. What are they at right now? The same thing for others. So history ultimately is the judge. I'm not here to defend anything or condemn anything. I let the people speak, but I believe on the streets of Iran, the verdict has already been rendered. And I'm extremely proud of my heritage and what was accomplished in that era.
Mr. Reza Pahlavi, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.